I remember writing Jacqueline and just playing it to this empty room, and then thinking, oh, now here's a funny situation I find myself in. Right, I can either just let it ring out into the air on the bare floorboards and leave it there, and that's it. You know, you've done something a bit like doing an Airfix kit. You know, you've made something, you've finished something. I remember sort of having this debate with myself, like, well, what do I do now with it? Do I try and sort of like form a band and get to take it out there to the rest of the world? It's a bit cocky in a way, sort of like wanting to do that. But I changed my mind.
This change of mind gave us one of the most visceral, exciting and impactful debut albums ever to come out of Scotland.
It was obvious from the start that this was a band that was going to go somewhere. They blew up and became one of the most successful bands in Scotland's history, and if not in the UK's history.
It's always better on holiday, so much better on holiday. That's why we only work when we need the money.
I'm Davie Scott, this is Classic Scottish Albums, and today we're telling the story of Franz Ferdinand by Franz Ferdinand. A brash, angular strut of an album straight out of Glasgow in the roaring noughties. At its core, this story was, and still is, the story of four friends from Glasgow who wanted to make music together. But in 2000, they hadn't yet met. Lead singer and songwriter Alex Kapranos.
Everything that I'd been trying to do musically had kind of failed at that point. But what a great place to start from. Yeah, I had nothing to worry about because I had nothing. You know, so that's a good place to start.
It turned out it was the perfect place to start. In the summer of 2000, Alex met Bob Hardy. This chance encounter was the beginning of Franz Ferdinand.
We used to work in a kitchen together and had this vague idea of forming a band together. Mucked about with a couple of other musicians. It didn't really work. Then one night we went to a party and met Nick. Bob and I arrived with a bottle of vodka. We chipped in for a litre of vodka to keep us through the party. Turned round and it was gone. I sort of looked around the room and then I saw this leather trousers necking it, you know. Oh, what the hell are you doing? Yeah, so it was a bit of a confrontation. Like stupid wee boys in the schoolyard, immediately turned from being worst enemies, about to bash each other's brains in, into sort of being best pals. So I'd said to Nick, can you play drums then? And he said, yeah, I'm really good at drums. He couldn't play drums at all. He was bloody useless. But he was eager and really enthusiastic. Paul got interested in what we were doing, and it just felt really exciting.
Paul Thompson and Nick McCarthy added to the ranks. Franz Ferdinand started to gain momentum.
It felt like a gang of, you know, we'd all walk around together and do things together. All socialising was done together, and the ideas came together.
The name set them apart too. It came from a racehorse, which in turn was named after the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, whose assassination led to the beginning of World War I. Everything started to come together. The impact was immediate.
I noticed it first in the room. I know exactly. There was a kind of like a wee spare room in the flat that Nick stayed in. And in that room, on the day that Nick and Paul swapped instruments, where Paul started playing the drums and Nick started playing the guitar, you could just hear it in the room. Oh, I know what it was. We were playing Tell Her Tonight, and they swapped around. And so I was like, oh, man, there's something really special here.
Only wants to walk, but she's sorry. Only heard her talk, but she's sorry. Only touched her lips, but she's sorry. Only kissed her lips, but she's sorry. Gonna have to tell her tonight. Gonna have to tell her tonight. Gonna have to tell her tonight. Gonna have to tell her tonight.
Franz Ferdinand wanted to make music that girls could dance to. A simple enough idea which set them apart from the hipper-than-thou music of the time. They wanted to stand apart in terms of performance too. Alex thinks this might have something to do with them looking in from the outside.
None of us are real Glaswegians, although most of us would call Glasgow a home. You know, when you go to a city and see it as an outsider, you often see what's most beautiful about it. We didn't really want to sort of have to pay our dues to the people who were at the top of the scene at that particular point. We just wanted to sort of exist outside it. And in the late 90s, early 2000s, I went over to Berlin, and what I loved about the place was none of the venues were actually venues. They were squatted buildings, just places where people had taken over and set up a bar.
Nick and Alex hoped to create something akin to the squats in Berlin. At that point, Glasgow offered many wonderful empty old buildings, so they started trekking about the city to find one with a sympathetic landlord. They discovered the venue that they'd christened the Chateau. And if it took the four of them coming together to create the Franz sound, the Chateau really helped concentrate it.
It had been a factory, and so there were glass windows on all four walls, so you could see right across the city in all directions. There was a friend of a friend who had been an electrician and managed to get him to connect the mains back up in a creative way, so, avoiding the meter. And yeah, we got the sort of like the whole place up and running and functioning again. We sort of rehearsed there for a bit and started throwing parties. But yeah, it was great fun, really, really good fun. But they'd always end up getting busted by the police at the end. But then we moved off over to this other building, which Nick discovered when he was out on his bike, which was the former CID in Tobago Street. The building had been the courtroom, the cells, police station, and mortuary for the East End of Glasgow. And it was an incredible place, really, really incredible place.
Nick McCarthy.
This is a room where we wrote 40 Feet because we kind of really like this kind of, like these acoustics, this big echo, this big hall. This is the courtroom, this is where the hammer fell.
The rain used to come in pretty badly. We had to move to one of the cells.
Because none of us had money, and this place was so cheap, we rented the cell for £10 a week.
So we were pretty close together, and I think it really tightened up the sound quite a lot. You know, like everything suddenly became more confined and concentrated, probably due to our immediate surroundings.
As I glance once upon the foam, 40 feet beneath my feet, the coldest calm falls through the molten veins, cooling all the blood to slush, congeals around again. Oh, la, 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 la.
Our first gig was there was a group of about 4 or 5 girls who were doing a show called Girl Art, and we were the band playing at the party. And it's probably the most terrifying gig of my life because there was maybe about 40 people there, but I knew all of them really well. I'm trying to think, at that gig, there was Jacqueline, Tala Tonight, Darts of Pleasure, I think, and Michael. I think it was actually Michael. I think Michael actually played the song Michael. It's probably why he left the band.
Michael referring to sometime Franz member Michael Kasparis, but Jacqueline Cameron was the subject of the very first song on their debut album.
Because it was about a story that she'd told me. Like, she'd told me this story about how she'd worked in the poetry library in London when she was younger. In the song, she was 17, but I think she was really about 23 at the time. But 23 doesn't rhyme with Jacqueline, does it? So it had to change. And Ivor Cutler used to come in. They used to go for tea and scones together. And I think Jacqueline was quite a naive young 23-year-old and didn't realise that he was really into her. I think he made a pass at her, and she'd been quite shocked. And he says, "Oh no, I don't see you in that way, Ivor, at all." And then she'd given him a hug, and he said, "Take your hands off me, don't treat me like a piece of meat. I might look like an old man to you, but I still see the world through the same eyes that I saw the world through when I was your age." And I really loved the tragedy and drama and, well, poetry of the situation.
Jacqueline was 17, working on a desk when appeared above a spectacle.
It was really nice that the song was named after me because it's only really one verse that's about me. But I think maybe they used Jacqueline as a working title for the song, and then they changed it to Better on Holiday, but I had a bit of a petted lip when I heard that it got changed back to Better on Holiday, so I changed it back to Jacqueline, just for me.
Well, you know that face as I do, and how in the return of the gaze she can return you the face that you are staring from.
I think that was true for a lot of the songs that I was writing. I just wanted to capture these incredible things that were just happening to people around about me. And that's what the song Michael was about as well. You know, just my pal Michael was dancing with my other pal, and it was a good night out.
Another early song, the lyrics easily made this the most debated on the album. Inspired, as Alex says, by a hedonistic night out, he describes the beautiful boys on a beautiful dance floor and over implores Michael to dance with him. And it's just a simple painting of a simple scene, really, but that did not stop people from forming strong opinions about it.
This is where I'll be, so heavenly, so come and dance with me, Michael. So sexy, I'm sexy, so come and dance with me, Michael. I'm all that you see, you wanna see, so come and dance with me, Michael. So close now, so close now, so come and dance with me, so come and dance with me, so come and dance with me. Michael, you're the boy with the leather hips, sticky hips now, but one more sticky lips. Michael, you're the only one I ever want, only one I ever want, only one I ever want. Beautiful boys on a beautiful dance floor. Michael, you're dancing like a beautiful dance floor. Michael, with your silver platter ball, nothing matters now.
As with the material for the songs, it was friends of the band who informed their style and their direction, with a supporting role awarded to the grandeur of the Glasgow School of Art.
And my girlfriend at the time, when we got the band together, it was this girl, Vivian Lewis, and she was a student at the art school. And Nick's girlfriend was at the art school, and Bob was studying at the art school, and Paul was a life model at the art school. And the discussions and the exchange of ideas that you have with these personalities have way more impact than anything else. Certainly more impact as well, I'd say, than some of the influences that get attributed to us. When we first started rehearsing, we did a cover by Sparks, we did a Chew by Sparks.
The band have always paid credit to early Scottish acts like Joseph Kay, the Fire Engines and Orange Juice, but the music of Sparks was a bigger influence and one rarely identified.
To me, our music is full of Sparks, and like, so the ideas that you get in Sparks records, like even the hits and Take Me Out, you know, the boot, boot, boot. It's like this town ain't big enough for the both of us, something like that. I mean, that's the sort of thing that we wanted to do, but nobody ever really seems to pick up on that. Or Paul McCartney's second solo record, McCartney 2, you know, the one with Temporary Secretary and Coming Up and all that sort of stuff. That was another record that Paul loved, that record at the time, and I think that record had a big influence on us and sort of the way we sort of wanted to make music.
Mr. Knox, can you find for me someone strong and sweet fitting on my knee? She can keep her job if she gets it wrong. Ah, but Mr. Knox, I won't need her long.
In fact, Paul McCartney's guitar playing as well, like the guitar solo in Taxman, you know, that sort of staccato, really precise but awkward way of playing. I know we were drawn to a lot of Russian imagery, particularly the constructivist stuff like Rodchenko and Lisitsky. I liked that because it seemed to be visually a visual version of what we were trying to do musically. It's all lines and angles, and that's exactly what we wanted to do with the music.
Jacqueline Cameron.
This is a leaflet from when Franz Ferdinand played at the Glasgow School of Art, Wednesday the 26th of March. I take it as 2002. And I think it was Bob who designed this before they were even signed. They were incorporating the art and the music thing, and it's a lovely design.
So 3 years after Alex had questioned whether or not to take this music to a wider audience, Franz Ferdinand had a look, a sound and self-assurance that seemed set to take them to the next level. Here's Vic Galloway.
At that time, rock music had very much been the domain of new metal bands. And then a bunch of bands came out, largely from America. The Strokes, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, the White Stripes, they all seemed to arrive at the same time. And I think Franz Ferdinand They looked great. They sounded great. They were a phenomenal live band straight from the off. Really exciting to see. They were just the whole package, I suppose.
The Franz Ferdinand story started to gain momentum.
I had them in session on BBC Radio Scotland, and it must have been the sort of autumn of 2003. They played 3 great session tracks. So really great to get a band before they've even finished naming their songs. And then, you know, you witness 6 months, 9 months later, a global smash.
Franz Ferdinand, everyone's been getting incredibly giddy about them recently, including
Art School Aravis in the charts, Franz Ferdinand.
As we were playing before, it was Franz Ferdinand.
Glasgow, Franz Ferdinand!
We produced Franz Ferdinand! We welcome from Glasgow, Franz Ferdinand. Good evening.
Oh, hello.
We've been trying to get you on the show for ages. You've just been gadding around, playing the festivals, hanging out in Glasgow. Is that right?
You know, it's a busy life being in Franz Ferdinand.
So are you ready to play your first track for us?
Yeah, we are. This is going to be Dots of Pleasure.
Excellent. For the very first time live on Radio 1, this is Franz Ferdinand.
So, Franz, a band that you believe in demo form, can they actually write a brilliant debut album? Can they actually deliver on these early promises? Wow, they're exciting live. Wow, these demos are good. But they actually did.
But recording the album wasn't without its problems. The band teamed up with Swedish producer Tor Johansson, who'd previously worked with the Cardigans and Saint Etienne, but was perhaps unaccustomed to a band who were so defiantly sure of their sound.
I think I was quite naive in my approach to making music at that time. I thought, you know, you wrote songs, you knew how they sounded, you went into a studio and you got a good engineer and made sure that they sounded right and then mixed them. I pretty much thought that's what a producer would do. I didn't really get on with the producer. But it was actually a great thing to do, because when you're in a room with somebody who's saying to you, I think your idea is bad, if you then have to argue and say, no, my idea is really good because it's this, and so then argue why it's good, and it really sort of like hardened that record, that first record that we made, because I think Tor wanted to make quite an elaborate sort of lush record, which is exactly the opposite of the kind of record that we ended up making.
So there it was, Franz Ferdinand by Franz Ferdinand. Vic Galloway.
This was their first collection of tunes as Franz Ferdinand, so they wanted to hit you right between the eyes with 11 potential singles, I think. Jacqueline, I love the way it starts the album with Alex's voice and kind of almost sweet, jazzy selection of chords. I think they just called the single Matinee, but on the album it's The Dark of the Matinee. I just love the riff in this. I love the vocals and the sort of pictures that it brings to mind.
The phrase "the dark of the matinee" itself was Bob's. He always thought he loved the romance of being in the cinema during the day and sort of walking out into daylight. For me, it's about the walk home I used to do from school, and this girl I used to walk home with, who was slightly older than me, and I didn't stand a chance with, but.
Take your right finger, slide the nail under the top and bottom buttons off my blazer, relax the fringle, slacken ties and I, not to look at you in the shoe, but the eyes, find the eyes, find me and follow me through corridors or factories and files, you must follow, leave this academic.
Another track I really like on the debut album is This Fire. It's a really anthemic track. It's a great lyric, and I think it's such a brilliant tune. And I love the interplay between the guitars on that one.
I was trying to write something like Screamin' Jay Hawkins. Like, I really love Screamin' Jay Hawkins, totally obsessed with Screamin' Jay Hawkins, and and Howlin' Wolf as well, sort of real sort of restrained bursts of notes rather than sort of like over the top flourishes and florid playing.
The album closer, 40 Feet, sounds distinctively different to anything else. Alex's dad is Greek, and when Alex was growing up, his dad played him rimbetica. It's true rebel music, and it throws up an unexpected revelation.
That down, 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 down. That all came from that sort of music, because we wanted to make two bands. We were going to make one band which was going to be our pop group, and one band which was going to be like a sort of folk thing, playing this kind of music. But I don't know, that band never really came to anything.
Without their folk project to distract them, the band were free to pursue global domination, starting with single Take Me Out, released in January 2004.
Take Me Out, we'd tried to play it live a couple of times and it hadn't really worked, and then we'd swapped it around. We took the two verses and put them at the beginning of the song and then played all the choruses together and written a new little chorus thing. I remember saying to Bob, saying like, yeah, you know, I think that sounds all right now as a song. He went, yeah, it does, seems to work now, doesn't it? I said, yeah. It's funny, you know, it even sounds like the sort of thing I could imagine on the radio.
The official chart. The top three now on Radio 1, beginning with either Michelle, Franz Ferdinand, or Kelly's with Milkshake.
3.
Franz Ferdinand.
It just seemed one song of many when we were writing them, but it's got a really catchy hook. Yeah, I guess that's probably what's most important, really, isn't it? If you want to get in the charts. Yeah, I think Jacqueline's a much better song, but you can't jump up and down and go no 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 to that one, can you?
One of the most remarkable things about Franz Ferdinand was their acceptance across the board. The album sold over 3.5 million copies, so they easily get the populist vote, whilst their art school roots and savvy presentation gained them acceptance by more highbrow critics. This was a band that it was okay for everyone to like, a rare thing indeed.
The debut album came out, the Mercury Music Prize happened that year. They were nominated alongside another 11 albums.
The winner of the 2004 Nationwide Mercury Prize is...
And lo and behold, Franz Ferdinand won.
Franz Ferdinand! Congratulations.
Oh! Hey, Thompson, come over here. Well, there we go. We really didn't expect to win this. We haven't written a speech or anything. We are truly gobsmacked. It's fantastic.
The thing is, while Franz Ferdinand's rapid ascent to international recognition was exciting to view from the outside, on the inside it was more difficult to grasp. Here's Alex.
Things kind of went nuts for a while. We got a lot of attention, which we weren't necessarily expecting to get. And I spent a lot of that year sort of like convincing myself that I should be enjoying this. You know, like, I guess kind of almost lying to myself, saying, oh yes, this is great, where I wasn't really enjoying it. I kind of hated it, you know. I like all those kind of award ceremonies and things like that, and that kind of interview and stuff. I just honestly kind of felt slightly awkward about it, and felt it was quite detached. And then I'd feel guilty because I wasn't enjoying all this stuff that I knew I probably should be enjoying. And we did get to do incredible things like play the Grammys and looking out in the audience and say, "Oh, aye, there's Robert Plant, and aye, there's Tina Turner," or whatever. And that's pretty funny, It's pretty funny. We walked up the red carpet between Hulk Hogan and James Brown. That was weird. Yeah, wonderful things, and I just felt sort of self-conscious and awkward through most of it, to be honest. It just seemed uncontrollable.
Live performance was their salvation. On stage, the band is the gang they always were, communicating the music they love directly to their audience. And you can hear this at their 2014 The Park appearance, returning home after travelling the world, returning with the song that started it all.
Wow! Team The Park, amazing. What a welcome home, thank you. This next song is about a few friends of ours in Glasgow, and it's about how they all know that it's always better on holiday. And the one who really knows it, her name is Jacqueline, and she was 17, working on a desk when I appeared above a spectacle. Forgot that he had wrecked a girl. Sometimes these eyes forget the face they're peering from, when the face they peer upon, well, that face is idle, and how in the return of the gaze she can return you the face that you are staring from.
BBC Radio Scotland.